Hey, this is Brian McManus, Denver Broncos Super Bowl champion, and you listen to The Scoop on alscoop.com.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to The Scoop. This is Season 6, Episode 26. I'm John DeCarlo. Sam Cohn and Sam Newman are with me once again. Kyle Gauss is off this week. This is the... Would it bother you guys if I said this is the Chase Utley episode of The Scoop?
Yes. Can we pick someone else?
The
Yeah.
Saquon,
No, I'm just kidding.
Barkley episode?
Honestly, that's worse. That might be worse.
Didn't Wade Boggs wear number 26?
I have no idea. Again, I'm so bad with numbers.
I'm not a Chase Utley guy, obviously. But
Why? Because he hustled and was really good? Are you still mad about that takeout slide against the...
That was such a dirty slide. I mean, I'm happy it happened though. Well, I'm not happy that he got hurt, but like it kind of like rejuvenated the Mets.
Sam has more of a vendetta for the Phillies than I do. I just don't like them because they're not the Red Sox. But when I was younger, when I used to play MLB Like the Show or MLB 2K12 was probably the last MLB game I really played. I used to be the Phillies all the time. That was a great Phillies team.
Was it really?
Well, it was a great era for Phillies. That was like Ryan Howard, Chase Utley.
I thought you meant like I'm sorry, I misheard you. I thought you meant like the game was really good. The game itself.
The game was great.
Obviously, a very good Phillies team. We can't forget about Kyle Korver. Kyle Korver wore number 26.
That's true. He did. He's bounced around a lot. Has he changed numbers, or has he been 26 his whole
I think
career?
Was he 26 with the Sixers? I don't know.
I'm not sure.
Where's he
That's
now?
a good question.
He's still in the NBA. I feel like he's with
So
like
the internet.
He's playing the role of Ashton Kutcher in a biopic.
He plays for the Bucks. Yeah, who last played for the Bucks? Does that mean he retired?
Yes.
I feel like we should. I feel like this is something we should know. I think 2018 was the last time he played.
Kyle Korver could come off the street.
Yeah, He played in 2019 for Milwaukee, and I don't see any 2020 stats. I'm assuming.
Do you guys know where he played his college ball?
Creighton, right?
Good job. Anyway,
Look at us.
We do have a packed show for you guys. Again, you're probably listening to this on Thursday morning. Temple is set to tip off soon against USF in the American Athletic Conference tournament. We're going to lead off the podcast here talking about the Temple basketball team, which has obviously been on a little bit more than the 2-week pause due to the multiple positive COVID tests in the program. So again, the last 2 regular season games at UCF and against Wichita State were canceled, and the Owls will see what they can do in the conference tournament now. Have a interview for you guys with Brian Rowland, the Temple men's soccer coach. Now, you guys know that we typically don't talk soccer on the podcast, but when Temple knocks off the number 2 team in the country in SMU, it's time to talk some soccer. I wanted to pay tribute to to what they've done. Just a real signature win for the program. So we're looking forward to bringing that interview to you guys. And we'll also be talking to Temple tight end David Martin Robinson as well. So a lot of stuff to get to. We're excited to bring it to you this week. But let's talk first about this Temple basketball team. If you haven't read it already, the Sams here, Sam Cohn and Sam Newman, Boston Sam and Carolina Sam, have you taken care of for the preview for the game. You guys outlined 3 keys to the game. If you guys want to get into that, talk about that. Obviously, before we get to the 3 keys to the game, injuries are a big thing. Now, Damian Dunn is questionable. If we had to guess, we think that he might be playing in this game. But beyond that, the bigger storyline could be who's not playing for USF in the way of Alexis Yetna and Caleb Murphy. Caleb Murphy was on the Americans all-freshman team. Alexis Yetna, while he hasn't quite been the same as he was pre-injury, still a very good basketball player, still a problem inside. If those guys aren't playing, this game's different. You guys, again, you broke down the game in the preview here. Let's look at the 3 keys to the game. You guys talked about the rebounding battle, the turnover margin, and streaky shooting. But what's your general vibe heading into this as you outline the keys to the game? It's a weird situation where, again, it's in a weird season. Temple's coming off a 15-day pause. They haven't played in a long time. This is the first time that they're playing the same opponent 3 times in a row, but it's been 2 weeks since they've played. What are we looking at here with the keys to the game? What kind of vibe do you guys have heading into this game?
I think that right now where we are, again, this is one day before the game. We don't know for sure whether Damian Dunn is playing or not. I think I give the slight advantage to Temple in this game. And I think if you're Temple, you're looking at USF as a favorable matchup to what could have been. I guess their only really other options would have been playing UCF, maybe Tulsa if things had gone differently. But USF, I think, is an okay matchup for them in round one of the conference tournament. I mean, they split with them. As you mentioned, the last two games, having 2 weeks off of not playing makes things tougher. But if USF doesn't have Alexis Yetna and Caleb Murphy, which I think both of them are questionable, but I guess I would lean towards probably unlikely to play, then you're looking at things opening a lot for Temple, because in the last time they played, Alexis Yetna got hurt that game, and they were able to do a lot more with him off the floor. Like, he's such an inside presence. And if you remember, Nick Jourdain started that game, and a lot of the reason was he matched up well against Alexis Yetna. But when Yetna gets hurt, like, things in the middle open up a lot more. And as we got to in our keys to the game, like, the rebounding battle is going to be huge, as it has been, all season for Temple. If they can keep opposing teams off the offensive glass and limit second chance points, it's going to help their team a lot on the scoreboard. So without Alexis Yetna, I think that would be a huge boost for them on the interior. I'll let Sam take the other keys to the game and his thoughts.
Yeah, just wanted to add the point there. I mean, when Yetna was off the court, it was pretty evident that Temple kind of commanded the interior. Michael Durr is seven footer, but like, he doesn't really. I feel like he's not as effective without Yetna on the court, and he wasn't. And Temple really got to go forth with their game plan, which McKie said that the game plan that they had in the game before weren't able to execute it, and then they were able to execute it without Yetna on the floor. And I think that was, it was pretty evident. So just going off Sam's point, I mean, the rebounding is, of course, crucial, but also a turnover margin. I mean, Temple has been wildly plagued by turnovers this season, excessive. I mean, a lot of unforced errors. They had that 6-game losing streak, which a lot of it had to do with the turnovers. They're this year. I'm just reading this right now. They off our preview, they ranked dead last in the conference in turnover margin, giving up the ball 2.33 more times per game than opponent. And when they beat USF, they took care of the basketball. I mean, it's simple terms, but I mean, if they take care of the basketball, win the battle in the interior, I feel like this lean towards Temple. We like to see Damian Dunn play. We just don't know. But I mean, without Yetna, who we know what he's capable of, and Caleb Murphy, who was named a first team, was named all freshman. I think there's only one team, so he's named all freshman AAC today. So I feel like without those two, I would agree with Sam. I would give Temple the edge.
So if Yetna doesn't play, how do you think they start this game offensively? Are they sending guys to drive through the lane? Now, of course, let me back up for a second. If Damian Dunn does play, I could see Aaron being cautious and saying, we'll bring you off the bench. But if he's good to go, I could also see him saying, we're going to put you right back in the starting lineup. And maybe you go back to the starting lineup you had with Caleb Battle coming off the bench. There are a lot of different variables heading into this game, and not the least of which is, again, they've been on a 15-day pause. It's not like they just practiced as a whole team for 2 weeks straight. You got to remember that they could only do individual workouts for the guys that were quarantined and had not tested positive. And then they kind of brought the team back together. So things have been a little disjointed. So we'll have to see what kind of a starting lineup is out there, depending on who's on the floor. If Yetna's not playing, do you see Aaron saying to these guys, hey, I want you to take it to him. I want you to either drive through the paint, or do they try to get Jake Forrester, or again, depending on who's in the starting lineup, do they try to get Nick Jourdain involved with him out? Do you think that's something that they attack right away with him out of the game?
I think especially if he's not in the game, and this is something they've done throughout much of the season, is as Aaron McKie calls it, playing inside out, gain the ball inside, see what you can get there, then if not, kick things out, work things out, just to make the defense kind of collapse and shift the defense around. But I think if they can exploit Jake Forrester's mismatch inside, if they can get him going, keep him on the floor, keep him out of foul trouble, and have Nick Jourdain be able to play the inside out, play inside, and be able to step out too and kind of stretch the defense, I think that's going to be a huge added bonus for them for what they'll be able to do. But to your question, I would say that he'll look for guys like Caleb Battle, Damian Dunn to attack the interior and to be able to exploit that mismatch.
I think that we might see the exact same starting lineup, to be honest with you. I think it worked. And if it's not broke, don't fix it. I think Nick Jourdain should be in the starting lineup with Forrester. JP coming off the bench definitely gave a spark to his game, gave a juice to him. So if JP and Damian Dunn and Brendan Berry are 3 first guys off the bench, I mean, you got to like that if you're Temple. Especially with the way that Caleb has been playing lately, I think you have to keep him in the starting lineup. And then, as John mentioned, I mean, Damian Dunn hasn't played in nearly a month at this point. I don't know if he's ready to for live ball action to be starting, but like if you can ease him in there, give him 20 minutes. I mean, he's a great guy to come off the bench for you.
What kind of Caleb battle do we think we're going to see in this game? Are we going to see the Caleb battle who, put up 32 points but turned the ball over a lot against USF, or are we going to see the more composed Caleb battle who scored a little bit less in the win but also turned it over less?
I think you're going to see the Caleb battle, the latter Caleb battle, the one that scored 22, shot at a better clip. My amendment to that point is that the question of how does he react if he's not shooting the ball well?
Right.
If he takes his first 6 shots and only hits 1 or 2 of them, does he try to shoot his way out of a slump, or does he realize, hey, this is the conference tournament. Like, what I do does not matter. It's all about, and I'm not saying that he's a selfish player by any means, but we saw when he dropped 30, it took him a lot of shot attempts to get there. And with his 22, he shot at a much higher clip and was able to help the team because he was scoring at such a high rate. So my question is, if Caleb Battle doesn't get going right away, what's his response to adversity in that situation? And I think if Damian Dunn's on the floor, I think he responds well. And if Damian Dunn's not on the floor, I could see things going south quickly.
Yeah, and then it's a lot to ask to put that on the weight of the shoulders of a true freshman in Jeremiah Williams, who's only played 15 career games for Temple, to really lead them to the next round of a conference tournament, which he's never played in before. So, yeah.
That's the other piece, too. And again, you guys pointed this out in the preview. JP Mormon and Dre Perry are the only 2 guys with conference tournament experience. Obviously, there was no conference tournament last year. They got down to Dallas, got down to Fort Worth. The whole thing never happened. So it is a largely new roster, which is nothing new. A part of that largely new roster is Brendan Barry. We've talked a lot this season about what can they do, what have they not done to get him loose for some shots. Now, obviously, if you can get him loose for a few open looks, he could be the difference between a 6-point win and a 16-point win, who could really put some distance between these 2 teams. In the span of 2 weeks, again, knowing that they haven't been able to practice as a whole team over the last 2 weeks, do you think in that time, again, you've seen enough film, you have enough experience in looking at USF, do you think Aaron McKie and the staff have found any other creative ways to say we've got to get him loose for more shots, because it could be the difference in us, like I said, winning this game narrowly and winning this game comfortably?
I would hesitate to say that they've spent the last 2 weeks looking for more creative ways to get him open. I don't remember his figures from the first time they played USF, but the second time when they won, he was, I think, 0 for 3 from deep. So he got a couple looks, just happened to not fall, which is basketball, which is life. That happens. There's going to be nights where the ball doesn't fall through the hoop. But I think if they can get him those looks that they got in the win, and if he hits 1 or 2, I think you're happy if he goes 1 or 2 for 3. If he at least can get a couple looks, if they can find him in space and at least make defenses think about what he's doing, that opens up the floor so much more. And of course, it's the kind of thing where, like, if he hits the first, maybe he kind of gets into a groove, hits the second, whatever, gets into a groove, where, as you had mentioned, that can turn a 6-point lead into an 11, into a 12-point lead and a 15-point lead. But so I would hesitate to say that they're spending the last 2 weeks trying to pick apart ways to get him more open, just because the practice time has been somewhat limited with what they've been able to do with the COVID pause.
Just to echo Sam's point real quick, I think Temple did a really good job of getting Brendan Barry looks in their win versus USF. And like you just said, the shots, it just wasn't his night. The shots weren't falling. He had good looks. I think if they're able to continue to do that, you might, you'll take 6 points from Brendan Barry. Obviously, you'd like to see more, but like two 3-pointers, I mean, it's nothing to sneeze at.
So one last nothing to sneeze at. I like that, Sam. One last player to talk about before we close out the preview of this game. We talked about Jeremiah Williams. I think we can all agree that he was erroneously left off of the conference all freshman team, but nonetheless put together a pretty solid, again, abbreviated freshman campaign for the Owls. Averaged 9.3 points, 3.6 rebounds, 4.2 assists. As important as any player on the floor for them. Now it's a conference tournament game. Again, we're not saying that this game is going to be played in a packed arena with 15,000 fans, but it does get amped up a notch. It's a conference tournament game. It's a first for him. He's done pretty well in terms of his assist total, has been fairly responsible with the basketball. Again, turnovers have been a problem for this team, but we can't really say that he has been, the main source of that issue. What are you guys expecting from Jeremiah Williams in this game? A composed guy, a guy that's going to try to do a little bit too much. What do you think you'll see from him against USF?
That's a great question. And I have a couple thoughts. So the first thing that comes to mind is when I talked to him earlier in the season, we had talked about his nerves against NJIT and on opening day. Like, okay, this is your first game. You're playing in a much bigger arena and a much bigger gym than you're accustomed to playing in. What were those nerves like going in that first game? What were guys telling you to calm you down? He's like, it's like every other basketball game he's played in. He did his normal routine that he did all through high school. And he didn't really think too deeply about nerves. Like he said, he wasn't that nervous. He was more so just excited to get on the floor and play. The other thing I'll say is when you talk about there being more fans. So if I'm not mistaken, Temple's the only team in the conference does not allow fans. Every other place allows at least some fans. And you're probably going to get a little bit more fans at Dickies Arena in Texas, partially because of the restrictions in Texas, whatever, and partially because it's a big arena that they can fit. I think it's like 3,500 fans at 25% capacity. When it comes to Jeremiah Williams, and I don't know this for sure, wasn't at any of his games senior year, but Simeon could pack a gym. Simeon could pack a gym as well as, any high school program in the nation. So I don't factor in the fact that there's going to be fans or it's going to be a little bit louder of a gym just because he's been in those environments. I mean, you won a city championship in Chicago. I can only imagine how many people were at that game. So that on top of the fact that he wasn't nervous at all for his first college game makes me think that he's not going to be any different for his first conference or first conference tournament game, first postseason game. On top of the fact that he's played so far beyond his age throughout his entire freshman regular season. He's just been so composed on the floor. And I think there's a chance that maybe the first couple minutes you find him kind of getting into the rhythm of things, but I don't expect anything different from Jeremiah Williams in this game on Thursday against USF than what we've seen all season.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with Sam. I don't think the stage is too big. Not that the stage is big, but the stage is too big for him. I think what you're going to see from him is he's going to try and facilitate the offense like he has been. And, I mean, finding Caleb Battle, finding Damian Dunn, hopefully if Damian Dunn plays. I feel like he played very well defensively over the past two games, especially what he did against USF in their win, what he did to their guard play. And then the fact that USF doesn't have Caleb Murphy, it's definitely helps Temple in that regard. And maybe you hope that he has a chip on his shoulder a little bit too. I mean, I feel like we all think that he should have been elected to the all freshman AAC team. And I think it was kind of a joke that he wasn't, considering what he's been able to accomplish as a freshman in 15 games. But I wouldn't expect him to be trying to do too much unless like Damian doesn't play and Caleb Battle just can't hit shots. I feel like he's going to fit into his role and do what's asked of him for sure.
Right, so again, the Owls face USF Thursday at noon. That game's on ESPNU. If they happen to get past USF, then they face the top seed in the tournament, the Wichita State Shockers. Again, we're looking ahead here. If they beat USF, we've talked about the fact that Wichita State might be a slightly better matchup than Houston. So again, tall task for Temple to win 4 games in 4 days and pull off what Drexel has done, which is to win the conference tournament, get the automatic bid to the NCAA tournament. Stranger things have happened, but this is the first step ahead for the Owls. All right. So as we said at the top of the show, we typically talk a lot of football and basketball on this podcast, but when the Temple men's soccer team knocks off the number 2 team in the country, you want to talk some soccer. And we are fortunate enough to have the head coach of the team, the head coach of the program, Brian Rowland, on the scoop with us. Brian, again, is coming off, he and his team are coming off that 2-0 win over SMU. Brian, thanks for joining us. How you doing?
Awesome. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I'm doing well.
Well, thanks for spending some time with us. We'll start with the simple question. Again, you guys have knocked off some nationally ranked teams in the past, but this one I would imagine feels a little special. It's the highest ranked win in the program's history. again, I know it sounds like a simple question, but what does this do for you guys? What does it do for the morale of the team, and what does it do for the reputation of the team?
Yeah, I think hopefully all positives. I think certainly we believe that, the 3 years that we've been here, we've been building our program to be a nationally recognized program, and, beating teams, and we've beaten, some very, very good teams, and SMU is another sort of in that resume that I guess we're building. But yeah, we feel really strongly about what we're doing, and we feel like, we're in a place that we can compete with anyone. Now, we want to continue to win games and win all the games that we play in, but certainly we know that on any given day that we have enough talent and enough, ability to beat anyone. And SMU has been a very, very good program over the last few years. So it's great. It's great to get a win in conference. It's great to get the recognition, but certainly we know that we still have a lot of work to do in this season, and then, continuing to build off some of these as it relates to recruiting, and certainly using sort of, any profile that this win would get us to help us continue to brand ourselves and continue to get better.
Now, soccer is a game that, obviously, I'm not telling you anything you don't know. Soccer is a game where there's so many little things that can tilt the game one way or another. And you guys won this game after having lost the last 3, all of them by just 1 goal, and then you had 2 games canceled in that span. Did something just finally click for you guys? Is this something where you might have seen this one coming and you thought, we're just a step away, we're just a play away? Did something just finally come together?
I think it's hard as a coach, because you realize, that where you want to be, and the realization that we've played 4 games and we have some new players, and we're still growing. So I think in the 3 games we played, I thought, we deserved better. On the day, I thought we were very, very good in those games in a lot of areas. But as you mentioned, one play and the margins are very, very small, especially in our conference. It's a very, very strong conference. So I thought we'd been at a place where we've been performing well enough to win those last 3 games that you mentioned. But certainly, our back was against the wall a little bit, and our, the best opponent, that we had faced so far coming into town. So I think we learned a lot about our group. I think we learned, you learn a lot more from losing than you do from winning. As much as you want to find areas to improve in your wins, it's always easier to grow from a loss. So I was happy that we're able to take some of those lessons and then maybe put more of a complete game together, so that we didn't really have any of those lapses or one moments that can cost you a game, which, in our sport and our conference can.
Brian, conference matchups are always kind of testy. I mean, there was 3 red cards and 7 yellow cards handed out over the course of your guys' game. How do you think your team responded to that level of physicality?
Yeah, I think, I know the 1 red card was sort of 2 yellows, which, I think maybe they're situational. Our sport's so interesting that, 1 card can kind of encompass a lot of different things. So, but I think the point of it is, whether it's, South Florida, I think there was a ton of fouls in our first game. All the games are hyper competitive. All the opponents that we have in our league, which is 6 really, really good teams now nationally, I would consider all 6 to be relevant. They're going to be, hotly contested and good athletes and sort of, good performers. So our guys have to be ready. And I think we're certainly in a place where we can compete, and not only in the technical and tactical areas, but in the physical areas as well.
And Brian, just to follow up, in his first collegiate start, your keeper, Owen Goronski, was able to notch a clean sheet and 6 saves. I mean, he was kind of thrown into the fire against the number 2 team in the country and was pivotal in securing 3 points for you guys. How impressed are you with this performance, and how much did that mean for your team?
Yeah, we've known Owen's been with us for, this is his 2nd season, and it's been 2 full years now. And we feel very strongly that we've grown in our depth in all areas. And I think we've got a really good goalkeeping core, but, Owen has been patient. He hasn't really had a chance to play in many games. The spring was an opportunity for him last year that we didn't really get because of COVID. And obviously our goalkeeper, the 2 previous seasons moved on to MLS. So we knew Owen was capable, but obviously that's a big test to get your first start against a team of that, that ability. They score a lot of goals and they test you in a lot of different ways. And I was very happy with his performance. Obviously gave the team a lot of, strength and confidence. So from that standpoint, I was super excited for him. And then obviously for the team that did a lot.
And Brian, you guys were able to secure an early lead at home to have that 2-0 advantage against a team of that caliber is pretty impressive in itself. But SMU came into the game outscoring its opponents 14-0 through 3 games. How did that early lead pivot your game plan, if at all?
I think the first goal in our sport is so critical. And I know we'd gotten the first goal, I think, in our previous game. So, getting the first one and then obviously building on that and getting the second, my hope was we could have maybe iced it off with a third or a fourth. But I think the first goal in soccer is, games are, like we mentioned, are so finely, the margins are so fine that getting that first goal and getting that belief, and especially coming off a couple of losses, it's good to, have the group feel confident and get off to a good start. And I thought we definitely did that. And certainly our confidence grew through the game. So it was important, not only in that game, but all games. But I think that gave the group a good bit of belief moving forward and feeling confident that we had a good approach to the game.
So on that note, SMU has an equalizer goal that was disallowed. What did that do for you guys, I guess, momentum-wise, and how might that have changed the game, considering it could have tied the game?
Yeah, certainly, there's always these moments in games you're going to have to make a play. And I know Owen made a good save, and certainly, there was a foul on the play, but you see those go different ways. So I think, sometimes you want those results, or you definitely always want those results to go your way. I think it was, maybe a wake up call that, we needed to keep pushing on. And I think they had a little bit of momentum at that point. And, I think it was a good wake up for us to kind of get back to being aggressive and being committed to what we wanted to do. So it's nice when you catch those breaks and they don't cost you a goal and don't level the game. So we certainly were thankful that wasn't an equalizer, and we could then move on from there, still up 1-goal.
Brian, like we said, beating nationally ranked teams isn't something that's new for you guys, and you did it a couple of times in your first season with a new staff and a mostly new roster. Your first win at Temple came over a nationally ranked Old Dominion team, and then you guys beat a nationally ranked UCF team a little bit later in the season. For someone who isn't as familiar with your program, maybe isn't even like to a casual fan who's not as familiar with the game, can you take fans inside? Now, like sometimes coaches will say, hey, we just went out there, we executed, we caught some breaks and we won. But is there something that goes into, as a coach on your side of things, getting guys up to fine tune them to say, hey, this is a really good nationally ranked team you're playing, to get out there and execute it and get that done? You've been able to do it a few times. What goes into it as a coach from start to finish and preparing your team to perform at that high of a level to say, this is what it takes to get it done and then go out and execute it?
Yeah, I think, every year is a little different. And certainly in our instance, the 3 years have been very different in terms of, what kind of game plan we can implement. But I think what it comes down to is, what I've loved about our program from the day we got here was that we've always had, competitors. We've had guys that, that first year you mentioned is probably more the situation that you were talking about. I think we had a good game plan in those games. You catch a couple breaks and the guys go out and execute it. I think over the last couple of years, we've been able to be, a little bit more, aggressive in how we want to play these games because, the level of the group has grown in terms of ability and the things that we can do. But what it comes down to is really just, the commitment to buy in and the ability for the group to go out and execute as sort of vanilla as that sounds. It really is about, guys buying into what it is we want, feeling like we've got a good matchup and them to go out and then make plays. But we certainly feel like where the group is now, that we're, this is not something that was not by design or a fluke. I think we're at a place now where we want to grow, but we can compete, like we said, with for me, anyone in the country. And I think we've shown we've beaten some really good teams over the last couple of years with this group, and I think we're getting better. I think we're getting to know each other, and we still have a lot of young players, which is exciting. So I think we're still seeing our best, and I think as we go forward, hopefully that we're the ones carrying the ranking, and teams are maybe hunting us a little bit more than the other way around.
Brian, you were part of a really successful Maryland staff, and you have roots in that area from having had a great playing career at UMBC, and obviously you played professionally. What was attractive to you when the Temple opening came up back in 2017? What made you say, I want to jump at this? I would imagine you obviously had aspirations to be a head coach. What made the Temple opening the right one to say, I want to go after this one?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we're seeing really come into fruition now is one, we believe that I could build a national contender here. And it's taken, it'll take time, and we're not, by no means, beating one team is certainly, crowned us anything. But I think we felt like, given our conference, we could compete, to get in the NCAA tournament, to give ourselves a chance to advance in an NCAA tournament in a conference that, could put multiple teams in. And then from the soccer standpoint, that allows you to recruit. It allows you to bring in, really talented players that want to be, playing against these teams and playing against the UCFs and the SMUs of the world, as well as a really strong out of conference schedule. And then I think getting up here and just seeing, the city, and then meeting the people in the department, you felt like this was it is a big school, and it was ready to be sort of cultivated in that way. I felt like there was nothing that I thought could hold us back. And, then it's just about putting the work in. And from that standpoint, I thought this was, really a no-brainer to be able to build this towards, really high ambition and high objectives. And I think we're on our way, and we're excited to be making those steps.
Brian, they just announced with things hopefully getting better with COVID that Temple can have a limited number of fans at the sports complex. And, in this world, people focus so much on, like, you got to drive fans to football and basketball. But we know that, when you get fans out, to soccer games, to lacrosse games, to field hockey games, they can be an event. And, I can't say I ever covered soccer down at Maryland, but, playing in the Big Ten, I imagine it was a pretty cool atmosphere there. And I've been to other campuses where it is an event where people say, I'm going to go spend some time out in the sun. I'm going to watch this team. And the more they're engaged with the team, they say, wow, we got a good soccer program here. And they start to get to know the players, and it becomes an event. Do you think that's possible at Temple? It sounds like obviously that's the direction where you want to take things. You have national goals. Obviously it's a little bit different now. You're playing in the spring because of COVID, but what's possible atmosphere wise for what you want to build? Do you see something like that and say, I want us to be I want this game, I want a Temple soccer game to be a destination thing for Temple fans, for the students, for the families? Do you think that's possible at Temple?
100%. I think that, when I was looking at this position and Pat Kraft was the AD here, I think, that Big Ten, that Maryland model, which, if you haven't seen a game there, it's like 7,000-8,000 people, and it's student-based, student-driven. And that's where we want to get to. I think our next home game is a Friday night. A lot of our games are typically in the fall, will fall on a Friday night, which is really great to capture sort of the student base, and being on campus, being, in a place where, we're so accessible to the student bodies, and then having, these great kids that are, like you said, that interact within the community and are very much a part of the student campus life. I think the goal is to start to really fill that place. And we've made some strides, and obviously we got to keep building on some momentum of getting some consistent games at home. And I know COVID's kind of, interrupted that in a lot of ways, but I feel like, to your point, as we sort of look into the future again, is building that atmosphere, is building sort of a really difficult place, like, a lot of college soccer venues have become. And we want to be one of those that, it's a tough place to come to, and the fans are on top of you, and it's just a great event for students to come out to. And especially being in the city, tying into a lot of the people that love soccer, is I think we can attract students. I think we can attract community as well. And, at the end of the day, our job is to win. because people want to come out and watch a team that performs well, wins games, and is exciting to watch. So we'll put the product together on the field, and certainly we'll start to create events where we can really generate crowds and hopefully keep people coming back.
Brian, 3 years or almost 3 years into being a head coach, what is it? Again, coaching isn't new to you, and again, playing at a high level isn't new to you. But coaching college soccer now in 2021, again, it's in a weird spot because of COVID. But is being the head coach of a Division I college program what you thought it was going to be? Is there anything that's been more challenging or less challenging than you expected?
I think up until probably last March, I think it was going similar to what I thought it would be, and certainly being able to, kind of build things as you want and see them being. And then I think with COVID, it certainly has challenged us all to be, more connected and deal with some of the be more flexible. I think as sometimes as, maybe competitors ourselves are hyper competitors, you tend to be a little bit rigid, and this has forced us to be flexible and make sure that we're, doing things that help us get to where we want to get to. And there's a lot of different ways to do it now. So I think that's probably been the biggest adjustment is just dealing with the current landscape, and then hopefully just really learning some lessons that we can take and move forward with. So, apart from the X's and O's and apart from the recruiting side, I think that's gone relatively, close to what we expected. Obviously, as we win and progress, that's become a little bit easier. But certainly, I think just what we've learned over the last year is to continue to keep those strong relationships and continue to be flexible and find solutions to what can be a myriad of problems or potential problems. But other than that, yeah, I've been really excited, and our staff is great. Those guys do a fantastic job. So I'm very fortunate to work with the people and the players that we are that are in our program. So from that standpoint, it's gone well.
Brian, just a couple more quick questions. And again, we really appreciate you making time for us today. In any season, you need leaders. I would imagine in a season like this, where again, things stop and start with COVID protocol, who are some of the leaders on this team, guys that can really kind of carry the message for you when you can't be around them as much? Is it a guy like an Esteban Suarez on the back line? Again, we know there's so many different critical phases and parts to this team. Who are the guys that have really kind of been instrumental to your success, not only just in getting a win, but really kind of holding things together now in a crazy time?
I think our captain Pierre Caillet is a guy that certainly is probably the most influential player on the team. He's a guy that's grown tremendously from when he got here. He's an exceptional player, but he's certainly a guy that does all the right things and will leave a mark on this program moving forward that hopefully others can replicate. But he's helped us push this forward. He's a super competitor, but he's also a really responsible guy. Along with him, Brandon Johnson, who partners him at center back. And again, often your leaders tend to be sort of back to front. And those guys have done a really good job of helping what is it, still a relatively young group, kind of learn the ropes, and them being international guy, or Pierre being internationals. We have a big group of internationals. So, him and Esteban and Mikel Borger, these guys have all kind of been around with us for the last sort of 2 years and have been part of this process, and certainly are guys that are, continuing to lead and help the new guys figure it out. So I'm so confident in them as leaders, and it's certainly much stronger of a leadership group than I think we've had at any point since I've gotten here, which is a testament to those guys really being bought into some of the things we want to do and some of the culture that we've been working on creating.
Brian, what do you do, if anything, outside of soccer? We tell podcast guests all the time, I'm sure you're sick of getting the same questions from reporters about, the momentum shift in a game or something like that. If outside of soccer, what's something that maybe people wouldn't know about you? Because sometimes people say, outside of what I do, it's just I eat and sleep and I get up and do the same thing. Are you that type of guy, or do you have interests outside of the game that people wouldn't know about you?
Probably over the last year, it's been very much that. It's obviously there's not a lot we can do, but certainly, my wife and I like to experience the city and the restaurants when they're open and travel when that opens up again. But I think we're certainly, I'm fortunate that through our recruiting, we're very global and I've always been someone that's like to experience new things. And obviously, we love the city of Philadelphia and some of the sort of the great restaurants and places to go when we do have some downtime. But I'd say over the last year, it's probably been very, very much work and repeat. But no, I think we're looking forward to getting back to some of those other hobbies that my wife and I have. And yeah, certainly, keeping up with everybody else. I'm an avid sports fan in a bunch of different areas. I love hockey growing up in Canada. So yeah, I think all of those and a little bit of golf if I can find the time. But other than that, this is an exciting project that myself and the staff are putting as much energy into as we can. And, hopefully it's we'll continue to pay off and grow as we grow.
Do you have a favorite restaurant that you missed that you haven't been able to get to that you're looking forward to opening up?
I think we've checked out a couple. I think we like some of the restaurants downtown. Double Knot's a favorite of ours. Soraya and Fishtown. So it's cool. We're in a great location. So I think those are a couple that we're looking forward to resuming normality and getting back there maybe after a win, maybe celebrating a win with a nice dinner at one of those places.
Brian Rowland, Temple men's soccer coach, thanks again for joining us. Again, congrats on the big win over SMU. Best of luck to you in the rest of the season. Hopefully we'll get a chance to talk to you again somewhere down the line. Thank you. I appreciate it, and look forward to talking to you soon. All right, once again, a big thank you to Temple men's soccer coach Brian Rowland for joining us. We promised you that we would talk some Temple football. We're glad to do that. And here with us today on The Scoop, and we're very happy to have him, appreciative of having him on the podcast, is Temple starting tight end David Martin Robinson. David, thanks for joining us, man. How you doing?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. Excited to talk.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. David, we've been asking all the guys this because of the craziness of the transfer portal, and you guys, you've seen a lot of roster movement. Guys have left. You've got some new players that I'm sure you're excited about. What's the mood of the program like right now? Because I think collectively the fan base, when they saw a lot of guys transferring out, the fan base from the outside looking in starts freaking out and saying, what's going on? What's wrong? Is there something wrong? A disconnect with the players and the coaches? You're obviously one of the guys that's stuck around, and you're a critical piece to the team. As we're sitting here in mid-March, hopefully in a couple of weeks, you guys will start spring ball. What's the mood of the team like right now after all the comings and goings with the roster movement, with the portal?
I think we're finally at a pretty calm state where now we're just working, kind of got out of the hectic time period where people were deciding whether they wanted to leave or stay. But for the most part, I think the attitude is that anyone who's here now is pretty locked in, at least going into this coming fall. So yeah, that's what I'd probably say. I say we're all just working, because we all know that nobody's going to leave right now.
Mm-hmm. Now you're a guy, and this is a question I never thought I'd ask. Like, you're a guy, you were recruited by Jeff Collins, you were around, and I know some of the guys who had left that say, yeah, we've been through a lot. We've been through a lot of head coaches. Now you weren't recruited by Matt Rule, but you were recruited by Jeff. You were there when Manny Diaz comes and goes. And I know this stuff takes a toll. I suppose you could have been like, you know what? I went through COVID. I'm pretty good. Maybe the grass is greener on the other side. You decided to stay. Why did you decide to stay? What made you want to stay at Temple?
First of all, it was the academic side. Before I try to go anywhere, I want to get my degree before anything. But for the football side, I mean, I feel like a lot of guys that left, not saying that they left for the wrong reasons, but I feel like a lot of guys put emphasize how we did last year too much into their decision, even though last year was a tough year. We were down guys every game, so it wasn't always the easiest. It was like first time we played through a pandemic like ever for like football like that for anyone. So I mean, it's not an excuse for how last season went, but it's definitely something that I feel like people thought about too much, because we were fine. I think we're going to be great this year. I mean, the year before that, we did pretty decent, so there's no reason why we shouldn't be back to it under normal conditions.
Hey, David, how frustrating was last season for you? You had a good game against Navy, 5 receptions, 72 yards, and caught that 35-yard pass from Brandon Mack. And you played the following week and then missed 3 games from being in the team's COVID protocol. And the season as a whole wasn't really the same after that. I mean, what was it like for you to go through that?
Man, that was rough. It was rough. I just felt like, I don't know, it was just at a critical time for our team, because then we started playing some tough opponents. Like we had the Memphis loss. Like it just felt awful sitting on the couch watching them play from the TV. So that was frustrating. And then getting back into it in the middle of the season, they were taking precautions with like easing me back in, making sure that I didn't like injure myself by going 100% right after not doing anything for like 2 weeks. So it was definitely very, very challenging. And then for the amount of guys that had to go through that process, it was tough. Very frustrating.
So David, you kind of alluded to this, but when you're coming out of the COVID protocol, how hard is it to bounce back, just physically and mentally get back in the swing of things, especially when you had so many other players out at that point due to injury or also being in protocol with you?
I'd probably say physically was, to be honest, the easiest part, because we train for so long that like as soon as you start moving again, it comes back pretty quick. But mentally, getting back into like those processes, because during the season you get your process, you know what you're gonna do day by day to build up to a game. But then when you're sitting around for 2 weeks, it's hard to keep up your daily schedule. So that was probably the hardest part, is getting back to a football mindset with the daily schedule.
So David, whether it's Dewan Mathis, Mariano Valente, Real Mitchell, Matt Duncan, Paul Gray, or Justin Lynch, either way, you guys are you're gonna be catching balls from a new quarterback with Anthony leaving. There's obviously a ton of time left for all that to be sorted out with spring ball and preseason camp. But what do you know? I mean, some of these guys you've had the chance to get to know. Dewan Mathis is somebody who's newer. What do you know of the quarterback room right now, and how do you start to build chemistry with those guys at a time like this?
To be honest, right now for me, it's been a mystery, because we've been a lot this off season. The tight ends have been primarily working with the offensive line, actually. So I haven't gotten too much crossover with the quarterbacks, but I know that all those guys are all competitors, and I'm excited to watch all of them compete for that job. And they're all great leaders and personable guys.
David, can you take us inside what the workouts look like right now? We know spring ball starts up next month, but what can you guys do now, and what are you looking to kind of get out of that?
Right now, our season program is looking like it's a phase type of thing. So they split it up into 4-week phases. So we had our first phase, which is the first 4 weeks we were here, where it was only lifting big, mind you that. It was some heavy lifting. And then we'll take a week where we do active recovery, get our bodies, get a nice little break. And then we do 4 weeks again where we have lifting, and then we also have what's called coaches workouts, which is basically conditioning based practices, just no footballs, just very technique work for everyone. And then the last 4 weeks will be spring ball. So yeah, where we actually will be able to play football.
Your eye at all on either side of the ball, even just the way they've handled themselves in the offseason?
Personally, in the tight end room, I know JDP, James Delapesca. He's caught my eye as a workhorse and a sponge for information, always just ready to learn something. Trying to think. Victor Stoffel is a lineman who I was always unsure how he was going to be because of his he wasn't too on board with gaining the weight that he needed to gain, but now he's at a 300, and he's a good looking 300. So I'm excited to see how he develops this spring and if he can be an asset to the offensive line.
David, you mentioned James Delapesca, and I mean, he's one of the guys at your position. Obviously, you come back as a returning starter. What do you think the future of the position looks like there with some of the other guys in the mix, whether it's a guy like Darius Pittman, a guy like Coleman Jeffcoat's going to be new. Can you talk to us about just some of the other guys in that tight end room there?
They're all great guys. They're all high energy, especially JDP and Jeff Coleman. They all love to learn, and they all don't hold back with questions, which is like, to me, that's the biggest teller of somebody that's going to be okay. Because I mean, you're going to get the information, you're going to get what you need. JDP, I know, has put on weight honestly faster than I did when I first got here, so I know he's going to keep working with that. So it's very promising, in my opinion.
David, you've now had the chance to play with likely two NFL guys. Chris Myrick, who's with the Miami Dolphins, and Kenny Yeboah, who's more than likely going to get drafted next month. What type of relationship have you been able to forge with those guys, on and off the field, and what have you learned from them? Any lessons you've taken along the way?
I mean, my man Myrick, that's a throwback. That's my dog. He just always was there for me when I was a freshman. Whenever I would get too flustered with just the life of a college football player, he'd always just tell me to handle my stuff. So I mean, he always says just go the extra rep, just do the extra work. If it's like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, even like after practice, those 10 minutes will always add up to way more time over time. That's probably the biggest thing that I took away from him and playing under Coach Foley. And then Kenny personally helped me a lot with my confidence on and off the field as a person. So he always because he always had faith in me as a player, because he knew that I can make plays the same way that he can. So he always just told me to just be confident. So that's something that I took away from him.
David, your offensive coordinator, Mike Uremovich, is also your position coach. What's your relationship like with him, and how much are you guys able to kind of get in his ear? Because you talk to different tight ends, and the role of the tight end, it's like, get me involved more. Tight ends always want to get involved in the offense more. What's your relationship like with Mike, and can you kind of get in his ear and say, hey, what do you have dialed up for us this week?
Yeah, I think this season I'll probably be more comfortable with doing that, because I've never been the type of player to go and say I think I should be more involved in the pass game or anything. I've always grown up letting coaches make the decision, but I think me and you we've had this relationship for a while, but I definitely can say something to him now where I could give my suggestions or my feedback as a player to him, and he can make his adjustments off of that. But we have a really good relationship. I always listen to him, and I think he trusts me a lot with how well I know the offense now.
What kind of feedback do you get from him and from your head coach and Rod Carey? Because I think it was after the Navy game in the opener, and I think it was in that press conference, and again, we're talking to Rod on Zoom, and I think he had said something at the time and said, listen, I know people are going to make and I'm paraphrasing here, I think he said, I know people made a big deal out of the fact that we lost Kenny, but David Martin Robinson looks like a pretty good player too, and he seemed obviously really excited about you. Again, then you had to sit out with COVID and being in the COVID protocol. What kind of feedback do both those guys give you about your game and what they expect from you this season?
I definitely think that they expect me to be a big contributor to the offense this year, kind of like just a reliable guy, someone who's always going to be a solid option, and whether it's the pass game or trusting me to make the block, which is something that I've always just been trying to improve on that I've been here, because I came in as a receiver, so that was pretty normal to me, but blocking was something that I definitely had to get better at. So I feel like I've been gaining their confidence in my blocking abilities.
David, last question for you. We always like to ask the guys, and we just have said this so many times on this podcast. You get the same typical questions from reporters about the game of football, but what's life like for you outside of football? Is there something that you always wanted to talk about that you don't get asked about, like something that somebody wouldn't know about you?
Mm-hmm. I mean, personally, I found that during my time here at Temple, I've liked to try a whole bunch of different things that I think I never like to try, which I just feel like I should say more people should just explore any time that they get time to explore. Because I know here I've gotten to go see all the things that are downtown. I tried skiing, which I never thought I'd ever try, especially during college and playing football. So I just like to say that I like to get out and explore things.
Were your coaches nervous and saying don't get hurt on the ski slopes?
This is a funny story, actually. I didn't tell Coach Yu before I went. We had a dinner with our ABC groups at Coach Carey's where he made like personal pizzas for me and my teammates. It was pretty cool. And I told our defensive coordinator, Coach Knowles, at the time, I told him I was going skiing the next day, but he promised me that he wouldn't tell Coach Yu, and so I told him.
And what happened when Mike Uranovich found out?
He just kind of gave me a look like, as long as you didn't go snowboard. He was more concerned I didn't snowboard because he said that that's more dangerous, but I think he's okay as long as I don't get hurt.
Nice. David, thanks so much for spending time with us. We appreciate it. Good luck, and hopefully we'll get to cover spring ball in some way, shape, or form in preseason camp, and wish you the best of luck, and hopefully we'll get a chance to talk to you soon.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It was nice talking.
Thanks, David.
Thank you, David. Appreciate it.
Really appreciate it, man.
All right, so a big thank you to Temple tight end David Martin Robinson for joining us. Some interesting stuff there. Again, a couple of interesting takeaways. He mentioned, if you heard him talking about the fact that they've been doing a lot of work with Temple's offensive line. He said, the quarterback room is a little bit of a mystery. And again, I'm paraphrasing here. He said, I'm looking forward to meeting more of those guys and spending more time around them. But, he mentioned Victor Stoffel and working closely with the offensive line. And I think he said that Victor was a little hesitant to put on weight when he got to Temple, but now he's up at around 300 pounds. And also what stood out to me amongst a lot of stuff that he said was that he feels more confident this year going to Mike Uranovich. Again, Mike is Temple's co-offensive coordinator and also coaches the tight ends. And you heard David say, I feel a little bit more confident going to him this year and saying, yeah, I want to be more vocal. I want to get more involved. What stood out to you guys about the conversation?
The one thing that I took away from talking to DMR was how many times and how highly he spoke of JDP, James Della Pesca. I mean, he called him a workhorse, that he's the kind of guy that the work effort, the work ethic is there, the effort's there, and he's a guy that could turn some heads this season. Yeah,
and he would be a really intriguing guy in the mix there, in addition to being part of the all initial team at the position. I mean, if you remember, James Della Pesca was a guy that they got in on early, and he was hurt up at playing high school ball in North Jersey, and I think the general consensus was at the time that had he not gotten hurt, I believe it was a knee injury, that he might have gotten some bigger offers. And I think I believe they just got in early on him, and would be a cool story for them if he, turned into a real contributor there at tight end. But yes, as Sam mentioned, he brought him up several times. And, that's the cool thing that I think that we've missed out on and not being around these guys. You're around practice, a guy flashes, and then you ask a player like, hey, is this legit? Did the guy just make a play today? But, the truth usually comes out in the wash when some of these guys say, hey, keep an eye out for this guy. They keep bringing up a name. So maybe James Della Pesca as a name to watch out for.
Yeah, for me, I think that what really stood out is just how he talked about how tough and frustrating last season was, while also coupling that with the fact that he thinks that too many players who transferred out of the program put too much emphasis on the 1-6 performance. So I found it to be interesting, but I mean, he kind of gave us a bird's eye view of just like how difficult it was, and he wasn't the only one going through it. So I think, I mean, for people who look at, on the outside looking in, not knowing what they're going through, I mean, I think it really took a toll on the players mentally, and remember with CJ last week, they're playing with a freshman team. Well, a lot of these guys are, like David said, on the couch watching their teammates play. So I think he did a good job of kind of just giving more introspective into that.
Well, again, a big thank you to Dave Martin Robinson. Big thank you to Brian Rowland, our guest from the Temple men's soccer program, the head coach of the Owls. That'll do it for this week. Again, in terms of our mailbag, Sam Cohn answered a ton of basketball mailbag questions for his piece that you can catch on the site right now if you're a subscriber. Again, as we mentioned at the outset of the show, you want to check out Sam and Sam's preview of the Temple USF game. Again, if you're listening to this on Thursday morning, the game should be tipping off shortly. By the time we talk to you next week, we will know if Temple has pulled off the remarkable feat of winning 4 straight down in Dallas and Fort Worth, and again doing what Drexel did and getting being an unlikely Philadelphia NCAA tournament story. So we'll have plenty to talk about next week as we inch closer to the NCAA tournament and certainly spring football for the Owls. And again, thanks again for joining us this week, and we will talk to you soon.